Before sunrise, Elias stands outside the enormous royal palace, about to enter a world completely different from his own. The palace appears less like a home and more like an entire hidden world filled with towers, guards, gardens, golden rooms, and secrets. The royal family sleeps in luxury while Elias, with no title or famous name, approaches the smallest entrance, the servants' gate. Elias passes through the servants' gate, believing he is entering a building when he is actually entering a rigid hierarchy. Elias begins at the lowest rank, working unseen in the hot, wet chambers beneath the royal kitchens. Before sunrise, cooks shout, servants rush with bread, pans crash, and Elias scrubs the remains of the previous royal banquet. Elias never sees the king. He only cleans what royalty leaves behind. Elias lives with wet hands, simple clothes, a thin mattress, and the knowledge that he can be replaced instantly. Elias learns that the palace notices every mistake, but ignores months of perfect work. Invisibility gives Elias an advantage. Guards, servants, and kitchen workers speak freely around him. The lowest servants have no power, but they know private details about guards, ministers, princes, and the royal family. Elias notices that a tray for a senior official contains an ingredient he remembers the man cannot eat. Elias warns the cook, proves correct, and for the first time someone important remembers his face. His useful knowledge earns him a move upstairs. Elias receives a cleaner uniform and begins cleaning the rooms where power actually lives. Elias sees ceilings higher than houses, portraits of dead kings, endless corridors, and doors governed by different rules. Elias polishes floors, lights lamps, carries messages, moves furniture, and learns to disappear when powerful people pass. Survival requires Elias to recognize rank instantly and perform the correct bow for each person. Elias realizes the palace is controlled not by walls but by access. During a royal procession, Elias finally sees the king approaching. The king passes only a few feet away without looking at Elias. The 5-second encounter teaches Elias how enormous the distance between two people can be in the same room. Promoted to footman, Elias becomes visible, and visibility brings danger. Every detail now matters: posture, appearance, walking, guarding doors, escorting visitors, and announcing arrivals. Elias finally sees the palace as guests see it. A perfect performance of carriages, ambassadors, music, candles, and mirrors. Elias stands silently, while nobles discuss war, money, marriage, and alliances within earshot. Elias learns that at higher ranks, secrets become dangerous, and knowing when to forget is more valuable than hearing them. One night, Lord Varric stops Elias, while he carries a sealed message across the palace. Varric asks where Elias is going, who sent him, and finally what the message contains. Elias says he does not know the message's contents. Varric smiles and lets him continue. Elias learns the encounter was a test because someone has been leaking information from the royal household. After passing the test, Elias is assigned to serve one royal directly. Elias's entire life now revolves around Prince Adrian. Elias learns the prince's schedule, clothing, meals, habits, trusted advisors, and difficult family relationships. Prince knows Elias's name, bringing both recognition and personal responsibility. Close access reveals that royal confidence is partly a performance, and the family's public unity hides private fear. One evening, Prince Adrian receives terrible news in a letter. Prince orders everyone out except Elias. For an hour, Elias stands silently near the door while the devastated prince says almost nothing. The next morning, Adrian asks for Elias again, proving that Elias is becoming valuable for what he knows and never repeats. Other servants now respect, fear, and suddenly seek friendship with Elias, because they believe he may influence the prince. Elias understands that the appearance of influence can be almost as dangerous as real influence. Late one night, a guard arrives at Elias's room with an urgent summons from the prince. Elias follows the guard through silent corridors and past doors he has never been allowed to approach. At the end of the passage, Elias reaches a private chamber containing the prince, 2 senior advisors, and a map of the kingdom. The door closes behind Elias for the first time. He is inside the room where decisions are made. Inside the secret chamber, Elias recognizes the kingdom map, but discovers disturbing military markings across familiar lands. One advisor questions why a servant has been allowed into such a secret meeting. Prince Adrian answers with 4 life. Changing words, he trusts Elias. Elias is ordered to carry secret messages outside official palace channels. Over several days, Elias secretly moves between private chambers carrying information that could cause public panic. Reports suggest a powerful border noble may be preparing a rebellion. Acting too early could create an enemy, but acting too late could allow an army to march toward the capital. Elias discovers that royal power means making enormous decisions with incomplete information. Elias becomes valuable precisely because he is outside the ambitions and rivalries of the official system. The prince begins asking Elias to report what he has personally observed. Elias is gradually allowed to remain during private conversations as a genuine listener. One night, Prince Adrian finally asks Elias for his opinion. Elias knows that flattery is dangerous, but an unwelcome truth could cost him everything. Elias argues that the palace may be looking in the wrong direction. Elias questions why a genuine rebel would leave obvious signs and why all reports come through the same 2 officials. The room falls silent, and the advisors begin seeing Elias as a threat. 3 days later, one official disappears from court, and the rebellion never occurs. Elias receives private rooms, better clothing, income, gifts for his family, and visible social respect. Elias has no title, but everyone knows he can reach the prince when others cannot. Power without a title gives Elias influence but no clear protection. Years pass, and both Elias and Prince Adrian grow older while surviving scandals and secret political battles. Elias learns that the most important moments happen in small rooms behind locked doors late at night. Elias becomes keeper of the prince's private chamber and controls who may enter. Elias discovers that controlling a schedule can mean controlling the kingdom. Generals, merchants, nobles, and ambassadors all insist their needs should come first. Powerful people begin offering Elias expensive gifts. Elias learns to accept harmless ceremonial gifts, without accepting anything that creates obligation or evidence. Elias learns that near power, dinners, compliments, marriages, and gifts all hide political meanings. Elias's greatest weapon becomes time. Power to alter outcomes without speaking terrifies Elias. Elias remembers the stone basin and realizes men who once ignored him now wait outside his room. An anonymous sealed letter warns Elias that he is becoming too important. A second message offers protection, and Elias burns both letters. Promotion has not removed danger. It has changed the direction from which danger comes. The old king falls ill, and the palace gates close. For 3 days, the prince remains in his chamber while the kingdom's most powerful people wait outside. Inside, the heir prepares emotionally for a world without his father. On the 4th night, slow bells announce the old king's death. Adrian looks at Elias. He is no longer the prince, and Elias now serves the king. The coronation lasts 1 day, but its political consequences begin immediately. Old officials leave, new faces arrive, and former critics suddenly claim loyalty. Everyone wants to know whom the new king trusts, and Elias is the obvious answer. King Adrian officially appoints Elias as royal chamberlain, shocking the court. A man born without land, army, or noble family now oversees the king's household. Elias now manages audiences, meetings, ceremonies, and the machinery of palace life. Palace that once controlled Elias's every minute now moves according to schedules he approves. Elias can no longer be invisible because every decision creates an enemy. Even Elias's expressions and private conversations are interpreted as political signals. Elias begins missing the time when no one knew his name. King Adrian orders Elias to investigate corruption inside the palace. Elias quietly compares records, questions clerks, and visits storage rooms. The scale of theft proves that someone powerful must be protecting the operation. Elias discovers that a senior noble involved in the coronation is responsible. Corrupt noble controls land, soldiers, money, and considers himself untouchable. Elias presents the evidence to King Adrian. King asks what will happen if he moves against the noble. Elias remembers when he merely cleaned the consequences of royal decisions. Now he helps make them. Elias advises caution, but King Adrian chooses immediate arrest. The noble is arrested the next morning, and by sunset the palace is divided. Threats begin. Elias's rooms are searched, and one of his servants disappears. During a royal banquet, Elias notices something wrong with his cup. A faint strange smell makes Elias put the cup down. Testing confirms that the drink contained poison. The king doubles Elias's guards, but protection cannot erase what he now understands. Elias realizes that he once could disappear unnoticed, but now someone wants him dead because the palace cannot ignore him. Elias looks over the sleeping capital and thinks about ordinary people who imagine palace life as safe and luxurious. The deeper Elias rises into the palace, the fewer people he can trust. The next morning, King Adrian summons Elias, not to a private chamber, but to the council room. Inside sit generals, ministers, and nobles, who once would not have allowed Elias through the same door. King Adrian points toward the empty chair and commands Elias to sit. Elias sits and crosses the most dangerous line in the palace, from proximity to power toward possessing it. Sitting in the council chair feels completely different from every place Elias has ever occupied. Elias remembers the wet floors, dirty plates, and the rule that servants must lower their eyes. The council meeting begins with arguments over soldiers, money, taxes, and unrest. King Adrian turns to Elias and asks for his opinion before the kingdom's most powerful men. Elias has answered the king before, but never in front of men who control armies, wealth, and entire regions. Elias proposes moving existing soldiers to strengthen the border instead of expanding the army. The general objects, the treasury minister supports Elias, and King Adrian approves the plan. A decision affecting thousands has been made partly because of Elias. Elias discovers that real power has no crown or dramatic moment. Only rooms, tables, decisions, and delayed consequences. Elias becomes one of King Adrian's closest advisors, receiving reports from across the kingdom every morning. Elias learns which regions are becoming poor, which families are gaining power, and which neighboring kingdom is preparing for war. Elias now knows more about the kingdom than almost anyone alive, but knowledge creates fear. Elias realizes most royal choices are not solutions, but choices between different dangers. There is rarely a perfect decision, only a price, and the question of who must pay it. Crisis begins when King Adrian becomes seriously ill. The illness is hidden while public ceremonies and royal announcements continue as if nothing is wrong. The palace understands that the king may die while the heir is only 12 years old. Every palace conversation changes as nobles, generals, and foreign ambassadors prepare for succession. The true question becomes, who will control the kingdom if the king dies? King Adrian summons Elias to his chamber at midnight. Elias finds the king weaker than ever in an almost empty room with a sealed document on the table. The king silently pushes the sealed document toward Elias. Elias reads that he will govern as Lord Protector if the king dies before the heir is old enough to rule. Elias realizes he has reached the highest position possible for someone without royal blood. The king remembers a lifetime of trust, from private letters to chambers, household decisions, child and kingdom. Elias accepts responsibility for the king's child and kingdom. 3 weeks later, the palace bells announce King Adrian's death. The 12-year-old heir becomes monarch, and Elias becomes Lord Protector. The great noble families reject the idea that a former servant should govern the realm. Elias's enemies accuse him of manipulating the dead king and repeat that he was only a servant. Elias knows his servant past is exactly why he understands the palace better than the nobles. Elias understands that the palace is controlled by information, doors, and thousands of decisions before anyone reaches the throne. For years, Elias governs and teaches the young monarch. Elias leads councils and negotiates with foreign powers. Elias prevents one rebellion before it begins. Elias survives another assassination attempt. Elias's portrait appears in government buildings while the young monarch's face remains on the coins. Everyone knows that Elias's decisions are keeping the kingdom alive. The monarch turns 18, and Elias's legal authority must end. Advisors urge Elias not to surrender power because the army, government, and public trust him. Elias realizes he could delay the transfer, change the law, declare the monarch unready, or even seize the throne. After spending his life moving toward power, Elias must decide whether he can release it. Elias returns to the throne room where the 18-year-old monarch waits. Elias kneels and voluntarily surrenders the authority that made him the kingdom's most powerful person. Elias understands that destroying the monarchy to preserve his own power would mean he had never truly protected it. The monarch tells Elias to rise, ending his time as Lord Protector. Elias is old now and no longer controls the kingdom or palace. Elias attends fewer meetings and walks slowly through gardens he once crossed at a run. Years pass, and an entirely new generation fills the palace. The monarch still asks for Elias when decisions become unusually difficult. Elias is called when ministers disagree, war threatens, or someone inside the palace may be untrustworthy. Elias has become something rarer than a ruler, the living memory of the palace. Elias remembers the previous king as a frightened prince and knows which families stood by the crown. Elias remembers betrayals, locked doors, old feuds, and rooms closed for decades. Palace keeps records, but Elias keeps the truth. Elias has no army or legal authority. Yet the monarch listens whenever he speaks. One winter morning, Elias walks alone through the palace. Elias passes the great hall where he once polished floors. He passes the dining room where he first served powerful nobles. Elias passes the corridor where he once carried secret messages. Elias passes the chamber door he once controlled. Elias passes the council room where King Adrian first told him to sit. Finally, Elias reaches the smallest gate in the palace, the servants' entrance. A nervous, poorly dressed young worker arrives for the first day. For a moment, Elias sees his younger self in the new servant. The worker recognizes Elias and immediately bows, but Elias tells them to stand. Elias walks outside and looks back at the palace. Elias remembers believing that powerful people lived without fear. Higher rank never brought greater freedom. Each promotion gave Elias more people to answer for. Elias discovers that the throne was never the only center of power. Elias remembers every stage of his impossible journey through the palace. Elias learns the final rule. The highest rank belongs not to the person who enters every room, but to the person who knows when to leave. Elias turns away while the palace continues behind him. Inside the palace, someone is promoted, someone is betrayed, and someone begins moving toward power. Beneath the kitchens, another invisible servant listens, learns, and waits, just as Elias once did. Every person in the palace has a rank, but no rank lasts forever.